Wells, and this is part 3 of the Wells Report on Manning Marable's book, Race, Reform, and Rebellion for My People. In part 1 of this report, I gave an overview of the career of author, activist, and professor Manning Marable, who died on April 1st of this year. And I began an analysis of his 1984 book, Race, Reform, and Rebellion, the Second Reconstruction in Black America, 1945 to 1982. In part 2, I highlighted the black elite support of the re-election campaign of the 33rd U.S. President Harry Truman in the late 40s. In this, part 3, I will discuss another piece of history from Marable's book that highlights the contentious, paternalistic, and oftentimes contradictory relationship between the black masses and their black elite leaders. Many of us are familiar with the story of the 1968 sanitation workers' strike in Memphis, Tennessee. Black sanitation workers in Memphis toil under horrid working conditions and meager pay, which left them living in poverty even with full-time employment. Keep in mind that this was 4 years after the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The mayor of Memphis, Henry Loeb, did not sympathize with the plight of these sanitation workers and stood in opposition to their demands for higher wages and union representation. The strike would eventually bring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Memphis to lend his support and bring media coverage to the strike. Tragically, this would be King's last action as he was struck down in Memphis on April 4th of 1968. After King was assassinated, President Lyndon Johnson intervened and urged Mayor Loeb to negotiate with sanitation workers, which would eventually lead to union recognition, an increase in wages, seniority promotion, and a non-discrimination statement for union members. I highlight this strike in order to discuss a very different outcome in a similar strike that occurred in 1977 in Atlanta, Georgia. During the Memphis strike of 1968, many prominent black civil rights leaders lent their support to this action, including one Maynard Jackson. Jackson supported Memphis sanitation workers in their struggle for dignity and respect on the job in 1968. And by the early 70s, Jackson had become the vice mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, under Mayor Sam Massell. In 1970, only 2 years after sanitation workers in Memphis went on strike, Atlanta sanitation workers went on strike for similar reasons. Mayor Massell also refused workers' demands, fired the sanitation workers, and used prisoners from Atlanta jails to collect the city's garbage. Jackson, the vice mayor, who had been a lawyer for the National Labor Relations Board, criticized Massell for his actions and called sanitation worker wages, quote, a disgrace before God, unquote. Partly due to his support of the city's workers, progressive whites, the sanitation workers that he supported, and the black community in general got behind Jackson and helped him become the first black mayor of Atlanta in 1973, defeating his former boss, Sam Massell, in a racially divisive election. Jackson's victory in Atlanta was one of many black mayoral victories that swept across America during and in the aftermath of the civil rights and black power movements of the late 60s and early 70s. This wave of first black mayors included the likes of Jackson in Atlanta, Richard Hatcher in Gary, Indiana, Carl Stokes of Cleveland, Ohio, Tom Bradley of Los Angeles, California, and Coleman Young of Detroit, Michigan, among many others. For many in the black community, the election of black mayors in large American cities signaled a change that they could believe in. A change that would positively affect an African American population that had waited for some semblance of equality in an America that has systematically disregarded the civil, economic, and human rights of an entire people for centuries. But the actions of Maynard Jackson in 1977 would also signal that black elites and politicians don't necessarily adhere to the wishes of black workers or the masses when they come into wealth and power. In 1977, Atlanta sanitation workers, composed of mostly African Americans, were the lowest paid of the city's workers and again went out on strike in protest. But what a difference 7 to 9 years makes. The very same Maynard Jackson that stood up for striking sanitation workers in 1968 Memphis and 1970 Atlanta denied sanitation worker demands for a 50-cent per hour pay increase and fired them when they didn't return to work. Even though Atlanta sanitation workers were earning pay that put them below the national poverty line, Jackson also considered that he would soon be up for re-election and he could not risk upsetting Atlanta's white business elites and middle class, whom he would need in order to be re-elected. In a stunning turn of events, Atlanta's black elites, many of whom were veterans of the civil rights movement, through their support behind Jackson against the black sanitation workers. Indeed, Martin Luther King Sr., whose son had been assassinated as he supported Memphis sanitation workers only 9 years earlier, told Jackson that he should, quote, fire the hell out of striking sanitation workers, unquote. In contrast to what happened in the 68 Memphis and 1970 Atlanta sanitation worker strikes, Jackson, a new member of the establishment, gained the support of the black community by framing the conflict as an attempt by the white leadership of AFSCME's International Union to overthrow the perceived rise of black power in Atlanta city politics. Jackson has secured the support of white business elites, black political elites, and the black community at large that had a sense of pride in its black mayor and political elites, even though, economically, many of them were in a similar economic boat as the striking sanitation workers. In Jackson's own words, quote, if labor makes the move on black political leadership, it's going to have severe consequences for labor South-wide, unquote. In other words, the political power of Atlanta's black elites would not be challenged, even if it meant sacrificing lower and working class black workers. Time and again over the years, black leaders and politicians have shown that their interests are not necessarily the same as that of poor working class African Americans. With this piece of political history in mind, it will be interesting to see how African Americans react to President Obama's re-election campaign goals, one of which is to do outreach to the same black community that cast 96% of its vote for Obama in the 2008 election. According to some reports, the Obama re-election campaign could raise as much as $1 billion. But always remember, in the game of politics, politicians don't necessarily respond to the color of the skin of their supporters. Rather, they respond to another color. And that color is green. This is Mark Wells, and this concludes a 3-part series on Manning Marable's book, Race, Reform, and Rebellion, for My People.
If you are in business, you should promote your business in the Metro Business Information Guide. For more information, contact Chris Woodard at 645-2282. That's 313-645-2282.
For the past 40 years, Project 8, Black Awareness in Television, has been synonymous with black media and black people in the city of Detroit, around the nation, and around the world. It's been 40 years since we started this journey, and we haven't changed. We've continued to tell the truth, to tell it like it is, and never sugarcoat the truth. 3 heads represent the past, the present, and you're the future. Give us a call. 871-3333. That's 313-871-3333.
They are here. They've arrived. The t-shirts commemorating Project 8's 40th year anniversary are here. For My People in Project 8, for 40 years have been a voice bringing information, economic empowerment, and positive change to you, our community. You can celebrate our 40th anniversary with us and get this eye-catching t-shirt by calling Project 8 at 313-871-3333. That's 313-871-3333.